This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. Recently, we had the pleasure on the podcast of talking with Kevin Hebert, our new recreation director. Well, Kevin's term as the newest department head has been eclipsed, one of the shorter terms, in fact. And we are welcoming today Perry Plummer, who is our new chief of fire and rescue. Welcome, Perry.
Great to be here.
One of the things that people might know and might not know is that this is not your first round as a fire chief, not just here in Dover, but in general. Can you give the listener a little background on who Perry Plummer is and what is worth knowing?
Sure. I spent 24 and a half years with the city of Dover, came up through the ranks, holding every position within the department, making it to the level of fire chief, stayed about 9.5 years as fire chief before I retired to go and run the Fire Academy and Bureau of EMS for the state. Then I went on to be the director of Homeland Security Emergency Management, and then the assistant commissioner for the Department of Safety, worked directly under three governors, Governor Lynch, Governor Hassan, and Governor Sununu.
So you're back.
I am.
I can only think of a myriad of things that are different from when you left 10, 12 years ago. What's it like your first stint? Most of who you were working with or who were working for you were people that you had sort of come up with. Now, I got to think, not that there are many people, we probably aren't hiring 12-year-olds, so it's not like we're hiring, though we are hiring young. It's not like you're not familiar with people, but it's got to be a different thing walking into that room.
Yeah, well, there's no question, the top senior 8 people I know, they were all early in their career when I was here. We had a relationship, we mutual respect, and I come back and I'm trying to learn the names in a place that I helped build. Yeah. It's kind of different. With that being said, some of them are actually the children of people that I came up through the ranks with. Yeah. So it is kind of interesting. But, the bigger changes and who is there is different. It's the different workforce. I mean, certainly, in the last 15 or 18 years, the workforce has changed. Some for the better. Some of us old people may say not for the better, but it's a different workforce. Certainly you treat them differently and have to communicate with them differently than you would, a firefighter in a paramilitary organization 25 years ago or 30 years ago. When the chief walked in, he said, sit, you just sat down. Nobody asked why. Now you say, hey, can you please sit because here's what we want to do. It's just the way that the workforce is. And if you don't adapt, you can't communicate with them, and therefore you're not going to be an effective as a leader.
Right. I think one of the things that you and I are definitely on key about is if you can't communicate, no matter how good your idea is, it's not going to get heard. And that's incredibly important in a firefighting organization because the end goal, whether it's putting out the fire, whether it's improving the way processes occur, if it's not communicated, you can't rely on those folks to actually get their job done.
There's no question, and growing up through the roles that I have, leadership roles in vast different variety of disasters, whether it be national disasters that we handled. I was chair of the Homeland Security Directors nationally, and all that comes down to everybody's educated. It all comes down to how well you can get your message out. And it's interesting. I learned a long time ago, an old baseball coach told me, it's not important what you say, it's important what they hear. Mm. And that's resonated with me for a long time because you can think you gave clear directions, you told them what you wanted, and then they don't do it right, and you think they're wrong. And then you realize if it's a group of people, they're all pretty smart people. They all want to do the right thing. If we're missing the mark, it's usually on me. So we really got to be able to learn to communicate, make sure that you're clear, and have them understand why they're doing something because it's never black and white. If you let them know why they're doing it, then they can adapt to do the right thing because they understand the bigger picture.
I had a conversation yesterday with someone. I had given some direction one way, and they did something different. And so I said to them, I'm curious, how can I improve giving you direction? What was my misstep? What did I not say or what did I not do? And they said, I just didn't listen to you. Like they were very clear back. They were like, I heard you, but I didn't listen to you.
Yeah.
And I said, so is that on me? And they said, yeah, it is. And I said, I don't think that's the right answer. Because if you're admitting that you're not listening, no matter how well, and I totally agree with you, we have to be aware of how people are hearing, listening, regardless of whether it's staff or board commission member or the public. That is one of the things that I think we do a lot better now than 20 years ago is recognizing our stakeholders and how we need to interact with them.
You're right. And then when you're in our business of fire and rescue and, quite frankly, emergency management, which disasters are pretty prevalent right now, you don't all have a second bite at the apple with directions. I mean, every time that you make a mistake, it's something you have to make up for it, and it's a cascading effect. So, you learn to be able to be a better communicator and get that two-way feedback. Otherwise, you're going to miss the mark. Because, being a fire chief is pretty interesting because, not only are you running a multi-million-dollar organization, you have the same trials and tribulations as every other business.
Right.
You have personnel issues, you have payroll issues, you have supply and demand issues. You have people, that leave, or you're trying to hire people and they turn the job down. All those, issues that every business has.
Right.
And then you have the emergency response issue. So, you're fighting fire, all the technical things, and you have to be able to, at a moment's notice, make that work and have all the people in unison. And then you have to be the planner because of disasters coming and, that community risk reduction and how do we, prevent injuries and save lives and property damage looking forward. I do think the difference between when I was here before and now is I think that community leaders have to be better planners than they ever have been.
Yeah.
And some of it's just a supply and demand thing. I mean, used to be if I needed a fire truck, in 9 months I could get a fire truck if I had the money.
Yep.
Now it's 3.5 to 4 years. So if you don't really plan well, in 2.5 years, your fire truck is not serviceable.
Right.
You're without a fire truck. That's a problem.
Right.
So, that future planning, that vision is so much more prevalent now than it ever has been. And it's not just in the fire industry. It's across government and across business, the supply chain issues. When I got on the job, there were 400 people for one position. And nobody asked how much I get paid. I just want to be a firefighter. Right now we have 4 positions that we're advertising for. That's unheard of, but it's just a different world to think that you have to plan better. You have to provide a better work environment to keep your good employees there because no one ever left the fire department before. Now they either leave for private industry or they go to another fire department. So all those things are a little bit different in this workforce than they were 25, 30 years ago. And certainly, we're always the fire chief. Oh, by the way, you had emergency management too. And if you look at what's going on across the country, it's becoming a 50-50 split between emergency management and being a fire chief. And it's not just, natural disasters, it's, school shootings. It's, cyber crimes and cyber hacks and those types of things. So you have to be more diverse than ever.
One of the things that I think is a hallmark of your first stint with us was shepherding through and working with the building committee on the North End station. When you look back at that station, which now it's crazy to think that it's 16, 17 years old, how has that station worked out for us? How, from an operations standpoint, is it accomplishing or has it accomplished what the visioning was for it?
It's a great question because, you sit there with a set of plans and, you have high hopes and you say, we did everything, everything's right. We've thought of everything. And then you realize you didn't.
Right.
But the station's actually worked out very, very well, especially from a response standpoint. We have grown from 10 personnel on duty. We opened that station, we went to 12. Now we're at 15. We're running 3 ambulances out of 3 stations. And the location's been fantastic. The station has held up really, really well. We're starting to do some maintenance on it now, obviously, pushing the 20-year point, but it's actually worked out really, really well. It's been a huge success, I think, and it still looks good and still, well cared for. Certainly our other stations have some challenges. When you have a station that was built in 1899,
right.
I mean, right now we're just looking at repointing that to try to preserve the integrity of the building. I've learned more about soft brick and what kind of mortar needs to go in brick and all that stuff just to write specs to have it done that I never thought I would. So, our facilities are a challenge. They're a challenge throughout the city. But the North End Fire Station has held up well. It's really worked out well, and it's been a great location for us.
When you think about your trajectory and you come on board in 1986, I was, I think, in an English class in this room. When you think about 1986 and almost 40 years later, what's the single biggest change you reflect on from the fire industry itself?
Unfortunately, in the fire industry, there's very little change. It's
kind of good because
it is. I mean, you go back 200 years, we're still putting, finding the fire and putting water on it. You'd be surprised how that still works.
So it's the emergency response.
But it really is the emergency response. Obviously, the explosion of ALS and ambulance service. Right now, we have 23 paramedics that are on the floor. So when I get on board, you're struggling to be an EMT. And, quite frankly, we pull them out, strap them to a longboard, put them in the ambulance, and give them to the hospital as fast as we can. Now we're really a mobile emergency room. And used to be, how quick can you leave the scene and get them to the hospital? Now you'll see our crews work 15 and 20 minutes on a patient in the house because they've given all the meds. They're able to intubate. They're able to give IVs, right. All those things. Just the other day we did surgical airway. So we cracked a guy in the field, to put a tube in because they weren't breathing. So, that's been amazing. And it continues to progress. At the end of the day, if we have well-trained paramedics who can deliver great emergency medical skills in the field as quickly as possible, stop the damage to the body as quickly as possible, decrease their hospital stay, decrease their rehab time, and get them back to their job and quality of life, that's really our goal. So that little bit of training and effort on the front end may save someone 6 months in rehab on the back end if we do our job well. And that saves millions of dollars across this country in healthcare costs and stuff. So it's all a big picture. We're very fortunate. We have a great partner with Wentworth Douglas Hospital right in town. We do a lot of training with them. We have a great relationship with them. So I think, that's been the biggest change. Even though we were on the cutting edge 40 years ago with EMS, and we prided ourselves to do it, some of the things we were doing back then are contraindicated now, because you learn. And so do the physician stuff. But when you have our medics doing clinical in the operating room and learning from the physicians there and stuff, it's pretty amazing. I sit in the back of the room, and I was the EMS coordinator back 40 years ago, and the conversations we had to the conversations they have now about what they can do and how they do it, and the anatomy discussions that they have, it's just amazing. It's amazing.
How do you measure success? You are a leader, true and true. How do you, as someone leading an organization integral to the management of a larger organization, measure success, and how do you document that? It's
a really, really good question, and we're kind of going through that. Obviously, if you have a strong strategic plan, you get goals and objectives every year, and are you meeting those? And that's when we're measuring success. But really, I think you measure success by the response from the public. How do they feel about you? I remember standing at the podium one time and we were talking about even a police department. I actually was supporting the police department at that time. I said, how I know Dover has a great police department? Because I had a teenage daughter at that time, mid-20s, who could go downtown, have dinner, come out, walk to a parking lot, get in her car, and drive home and never have to worry about anything. So that's how you measure success. When we have no fire deaths, when you have people who are recovering because of some of the things we did from an EMS standpoint, but also low turnover in your workforce. Are they happy to come to work? Because I'm a huge customer service person. There's been a hallmark of Dover Fire ever since Dave Bibber was here as the fire chief. And are our customers happy with what we do for them? And if they are, then that's success. With that being said, it's really hard if an employee's not happy coming to work and getting what they think they need to do a good job, and they're not happy. That's really hard to provide that high quality customer service. It all translates through. So, give them what they need to do the job well, set your expectations, and then support the heck out of them so they can support the public.
Sitting around the department head table, I jokingly started at this saying you were the least senior, as it were. And in reality, that's not true at all, because I think that you have an experience level, a knowledge base, and a command of not just fire, but also management that immediately moves you to the top rung of senior management when we talk about things like that. And I'm looking forward to you providing that guidance and mentorship indirectly or directly to other folks around the management table, that we all have things to learn. We all should be learning throughout our careers. And someone like you at the table, I think, is a huge benefit, not just for the community, but the municipal corporation. I'm very thankful that you agreed to come back. And in some ways, I was telling someone the other day, I don't think you ever left. You live here, and you've continued to be a presence, whether advisory or as an outspoken person. So from my standpoint, I appreciate that you're where you're at and back with us.
I appreciate that. Certainly. And, I kind of left out. I did do some consulting. I was the fire chief in Rochester, interim fire chief in Rochester for like 9 months, Salem 6 months. It was a great experience because I learned from everybody. You learn from those organizations, but you also realize where home is.
Yeah.
And, I think that, for 25 years I worked here. You don't find me eating dinner outside at a restaurant outside of Dover very often, because I know that they're the people that paid my salary forever. And I still believe that. So, Dover's my home. It'll always be my home. And that's why I'm back, only because there was a need that, I could help the department to get through this time. And I just love the city. So why wouldn't I come back? With that being said, the quality of people that are around that table you talk about is what makes Dover, because everybody's learning from everybody, whether it be the newest department head or the most senior department head. The commitment to the city, commitment to the citizens, and the commitment to doing the right thing every day has always been around that table, from the leadership all the way to the junior department head. And that's very evident. It was evident when I walked away, and it was evident when I came back.
I've said for a while that one of the things that keeps me here is the fact that we don't stand still, that we always want to learn, we always want to explore. It's okay to take a step and then realize that's not the right step. Let's rethink that. And I think that through the policymakers at the council, planning board, school board level, certainly Mike's leadership is take the chance and learn and then evaluate. The evaluation part, I think, is key here, is that if we don't think strategically, as you were saying earlier, it's all for naught.
We're just implementing a quality improvement program, continuous quality improvement program in our EMS services, and we have a very diverse group of employees working really hard at it. And we just came out with a manual, implementing it this month, and just the talk around that of peer-based, always looking at every single call or every single type of call and reviewing it and saying, did we do the best that we can do this day at this time on this call, or did we excel? And if so, how do we share that with other employees so we replicate that success? Or how do we get better? Because there isn't a system in the world that can't get better. Yeah. And when you talk about emergency medical services, you've not only do you have the medical part of it, but you have the external factors, up 3 flights of stairs, the person's in a bathroom and only one person get in there to help treat, carrying them down, all those things. And how do we do that better every single call? So that continuous improvement is certainly something that we embrace. Our employees embrace it. And with our peer-based program, where peers are looking over the shoulders of other peers to say, can I learn from you or can I help you, is really going to make a big difference as well. And that's something, obviously, that when I came back, one of the things that Mike Joy wanted, hey, how do we improve and how do you get there? And so I think that's going to make a big difference within our system. And quite frankly, it also helps employees because they feel that reward. You asked me earlier, how do you know success? Well, when you're having those continuous improvements, then you're succeeding, you're moving forward. Right. And as you said, Dover's always been moving forward. That momentum drives the next good decision. If you're sitting stagnant, you're going to be falling back.
On that note, as I said earlier, I am very happy to have you back around the table, and I appreciate, both as a resident and as a coworker, the input you provide and the leadership you provide the community. Is there anything you want to leave the listener with?
Oh, the only thing I really want to leave the listener is thank you for all the time that I was here, for all the citizens to support. I look forward to continuing as your fire chief, being back here, and look forward to working with all the residents for the next few years.
Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Dover has a wealth of history in its over 400 years of existence. Coming up, Mike Gillis is going to share some of that history with us.
After the election of James Buchanan as president in November 1856, Dover Democrats were jubilant. They began to plan a large celebration to be held atop Garrison Hill, Dover's highest point, and a popular spot for special events. Wanting to distinguish their celebration from others, local Democrats formed a celebration committee and arranged for the purchase of a cannon, which had been captured from the British in the War of 1812. Since its capture, the cannon had been stored at the Portsmouth shipyard. The cannon was loaded onto a gondola at the shipyard and ferried to Dover along the Piscataqua and Cocheco rivers. Once on shore in Dover, it was hauled to Garrison Hill by a team of oxen. The cannon would be a centerpiece for the celebration, which would also include a bonfire, speeches, and fireworks. 2 local shoemakers, George Clark and John Foss, were assigned the honors of firing the cannon during the salute. Prior to the start of the celebration, Clark and Foss, along with a local youth tasked with tending to the cannon's vent, tested the cannon. It worked perfectly. On November 19, 1856, when the celebration was finally in full swing, revelers assembled for the salute. Clark and Foss loaded a cartridge into the cannon to prepare for the blast when, unexpectedly, the cannon fired prematurely, knocking Foss through the air and down the hill. He was killed instantly. Clark was knocked down with great force and lay unconscious. He was taken to a nearby house and was revived for a short time. He complained of a freezing sensation in his feet and was given warm water and a good prognosis. However, within a matter of hours, he had also died. The tragedy ended the celebration and, according to the Boston Traveler newspaper, quote, caused a general gloom to rest over the place. The cannon would remain at Garrison Hill, but wasn't fired again until 1875, when it was discharged to honor the Battle of Bunker Hill and Dover's July 4th centennial celebration atop the hill. The cannon wouldn't be fired again after that, but did remain on Garrison Hill for decades. But after repeated vandalism to the cannon, including being pelted with rocks for years, the cannon was moved to the Woodman Museum, where it can be seen today on the museum campus, just outside the Dam Garrison House.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.